Hey folks, Andy here, and welcome. Sorry it's been a while since my last video. As I've mentioned in the past, life just gets in the way. But I'm back, and I'm trying to round up the Richard Lehman book series now. We have officially entered the top 10 Richard Lehman books. According to me, it is just subjective, it is just my opinion. I don't expect everyone listening or watching this to share the same opinions. If you feel that other books that I've rated lower on this list are more worthy of time, that's great. It's nice to feel that everyone's opinions is just that, it's just subjective. But these are my personal favourite 10 Richard Lehman books in order. So, now a quick sip of this. It makes any difference, but perhaps it's a bit nippy out there. So anyway, without further ado, my number 10 book on this list, possibly a bit controversial in terms of the fact that a lot of people would place this higher up, is The Midnight Tour, released in 1998. The last of the Beast House books, not including Friday Night in Beast House, which is sort of more of a coda stroke novella than anything else. Friday Night in Beast House takes place before the events of this one anyway. So this is very much the last Beast House book that Lehman actually released, and it's a bit of a whopper as well. It comes in at, I think, 538 pages, so not as many pages as Quake, but definitely his second thickest book, but the word count here is significantly higher than in Quake. Much smaller words, far less white space. So yeah, this is a bigger book than that. I think this is one of the two biggest books that Lehman ever wrote in terms of word count. I'll get to what I think is the other book when we get to it, so I'm just trying to get more comfortable here. But this one is a direct follow-up to The Beast House, and this one came 12 years after that book, and it's an unusual book for Lehman because Lehman, up until this book, had sort of settled into a bit of a slump in terms of his releases. He'd released Island, Quake, Bites, Body Rides, and After Midnight. And none of those books are books that I particularly like that much. I don't think any of them are really good. Some of them I think are actually awful. Or at least, certainly by Lehman's standards. Lehman never wrote a truly rotten book, apart from, I think, Island. And even then, it's because of things about the book, and I've mentioned in the review why. But he was basically writing what I see as short stories stretched out into longer events, but with so much padding that they didn't feel like stories. And it's unusual because coming back to the Beast House series after 12 years, one of the worries that I know a lot of people had with this book was he writing this because he'd run out of ideas and he just wanted to return to something that he knew had a fan base and that would be successful? I don't know, possibly, or maybe it's that Lehman rediscovered the love of writing and had more ideas within this world, because the Beast House and Mocassa Point and the characters like Sandy are some of the very finest places, locations and characters that Lehman's ever wrote. And although this is my least favourite of the three Beast House books, which gives me an indication of what at least two other books in this top 10 are going to be, I do think that this is the book that kind of re-energised Lehman and saw him catapult back into an era where he didn't quite reach that 1986 to 1994 era, which was his best era, but he went out on a high. It's a shame that Lehman died so young, because I really do feel that we would have got arguably his best work still if he'd carried on writing. But this was definitely his comeback book, and it really shows. It's set over several different time periods, predominantly focusing on the character of Sandy, who was the little girl in the first one, and then she was a teenager in the second one. And she goes from being a teenager to an adult in this book over a number of years. And it kind of plays out like a series of short stories in many ways, because we've got the adventures of Sandy and her little beast baby. And if somebody is new to this series and aren't sure what all that is about, when we get to the cellar and the Beast House, I'll say far more in depth as to what's actually going on with that sort of stuff to make more sense in context. It is truly messed up. But it's quite interesting here with her life and how she becomes a really nice character again after being an innocent in the first book and quite an unpleasant character in the second book. Really, here she starts to become a much nicer character. And it's an interesting series of effectively short stories in the same way that Blood Games really has all those flashbacks that feel like short stories really in a book. And then we've also got the actual big part of the book, the Beast House and the tour and everything, and this time with headphones and which was seen as high technology back then. But that part of the book really is only the very last bit of the book. It only makes up for a small portion of the book, and I think if you're going to get this book and you're a fan of the Beast House series and you're expecting another absolute carnage fest, you're going to be possibly a bit disappointed because it's only a small portion of what is a very long book. This is predominantly about Sandy's life, and a whole host of escapades that she gets up to, which is why it's my least favourite of the Beast House books, because I love the Beast House, Marcassa Point, the Crutch House and all that stuff. But I still found that the character of Sandy is one of the very best characters Layman's wrote, and the stories are really interesting and sometimes quite heartwarming, sometimes quite perverse and dark. And the actual finale involving the Beast House is as crazy and as action-packed as you would expect, with a few little twists and turns in there that really make it quite a lot of fun. The writing here is definitely a massive step above what Layman had been churning out for a number of years. It flows really, really well. And even though it's a big book, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like a much shorter book. It's a really well-flowed story, lots of highs and lows. And it's also got plenty of the things that Layman detractors would say were puerile and disgusting and perverse and weird. It's all in here. It felt a bit like a mishmash of everything Layman's wrote up until this point. But I think it's a really important book in Layman's career. Like I say, it's his comeback novel. And to come back to this could have been seen as an easy thing. And he didn't follow the easy path. And I genuinely just really, really enjoy the story. I think it's such a readable, such a fast-paced and such an engrossing story that goes to places you don't necessarily expect. It's as much a horror book as it is a coming-of-age story, which is something that Layman excelled at. And my only real reservation for it, and the reason why I've put it at number 10, and why other people might rank it higher, is that it doesn't really have a conclusion. The book stops mid-action in quite a tense scene, and that was it. That was the last time we'd ever get anything else about Beast House written. Like I say, Friday Night in Beast House was a sort of coda before this, and I think it's a bit of a shame that we never got a resolution, because it definitely looks like Layman was planning to finish this off with one more novel, maybe two. I don't know where he would have gone, but I'm pretty sure he would have done at least one more, because this is just open-ended and it kind of leaves you hanging. And in some ways it's nice to know that sort of there was more planned, but at the same time it's a bit of a frustrating conclusion, knowing that we never would have found out what happened to some of these characters or the beast itself. And it's for that reason that I put it at number 10. But in terms of story, writing, and just the sheer amount of stuff that's happening here and how well put together it is, this is my number 10 book for Layman. And I think if you're a Beast House fan, you're going to really enjoy where it goes. Like I say, it's less horror than the previous two, but I do think it's a really good book. I also do think, however, that in order to enjoy this, you do need to have read the other two books first. And I will talk about them in due course and speak far more about the series, because by the time you've got to this book, you're already aware of it, which is why I'm not really talking much about what actually goes on. I don't want to spoil it in case you hadn't read it before. But I think the Midnight Tour, I mean, Layman had a thing about Midnight, didn't it? Midnight's Lair, After Midnight, the Midnight Tour. He's got I think about certain keywords. Midnight was definitely one of them. It's a really, really good story, and a great entry point to the top 10. Although it's a book that you definitely need to read after the previous two. But my number 10 book on the list, so The Midnight Tour from 1998, Layman's comeback book, and a book that really restarted a whole series of pretty good stories. Really, there's a good couple of his top 10 books are in this top 10. Obviously, they would be. What I meant to say was a couple of the books following this are in the top 10 that showcased he was on a bit of a creative peak again. So we'll get into them as we go through. But Midnight Tour is the first book in this top 10, and a cracking read it is too.